Okay, first question from O_Kamosabe asks, how nervous are you about the Silent Hill 2 remake? Well, I'd say after the latest state of play and the Silent Hill presentation that Konami put on, we got a good long look at gameplay. I don't know if you guys caught that. It was floating around out there. There's like 15 minutes of gameplay clips out there where you can see James walking around, exploring early environments in the game, encountering some enemies using both guns and melee. And I have been worried from the start, and this has me still kind of feeling a little wishy-washy. Now, I want to point out too, my worries, my doubts don't come from cynicism. It comes more from just being worried about the pressure of remaking something like Silent Hill 2, something that is lightning in a bottle. It was incredibly unique. The Japanese developers at the time working on this were on top of their game. Nothing else had been made like this, and still to this day, nothing has really ever been made quite like this. So to just remake that, to do that again with a different studio, it's a tall order. It's the same thing why I worry about them, eventually, inevitably remaking something like Metal Gear Solid 1. That's so hard to replicate to this day. Would it work, brought up to modern standards? So I worry about that with Silent Hill, and I worry about it with Bloober Team somewhat. Bloober Team, I think I have tended to like their games a little bit more than some folks out there, but even still, I can see where there may be some disconnect. I don't want to doubt them at all. They're probably super hyped to be working on a Silent Hill game. Their games are a little bit all over the place. The Medium, I thought, was okay. It had some visuals that were cool, but I really liked Observer and the first Layers of Fear. They had some subtlety to them. They had some really interesting stuff. Then, you have like their Blair Witch game, which I thought was like total wasted potential. So I just hope that this doesn't end up that route. I hope also that on the Konami side, they have given Bloober the time and resources necessary to give something like Silent Hill 2 the love it deserves. And with Konami's track record and just the move they've pulled in the past, I have no idea. I don't know, man. And now with the gameplay itself and what we have gotten to see, which you've probably seen running on screen here. Thanks, Andrew, for putting that up, dude. I don't know. I think visually it looks pretty good for the most part, but it also looks a little clunky. The combat, the animations look very stiff. Now, you can argue that combat animations, the whole combat back in the day for Silent Hill 2 were already stiff. That like clunky nature was part of the point. You weren't like a combat awesome badass fighter guy. But I just think from here, it's not about it like being part of the game. It's that it just doesn't look impressive. And it's also like, well, if like we've expanded the combat a little bit, which they've said they have been doing, like with like a dodge and stuff like that, like what was really the point if it's still not really that big of a leap up from something like the original game? I don't know. I am excited because I want to be in that world, in that town, in that vibe again. I just think it's really hard to replicate that something of the original, It also probably helps too with the lo-fi graphics. I don't know for sure. I'm still going to absolutely give the game a shot and judge it with my own two hands. It's what I always do. I try and, do that for you guys instead of just talking shit all the time. But with this one, I don't know yet. It's up in the air, and I'm really curious to see if they can pull it off. And if you're new here, real quick, just welcome to my Q&A videos. It's where I take questions from you guys in the comments section of this video to talk about other games or news stories or movies or anything I don't normally talk about in regular videos. So this is your chance. Leave questions in this comments section and I'll take questions from here for the next video in a couple of weeks. I also get questions from YouTube and Patreon membership people, so thanks for having my back. On to the next question. Keeping with Silent Hill, at GeneW1218 says, what is your favorite in the series? Also, if you could have a survival horror game that's been dead but could see it being resurrected, what would it be? That answer is Clock Tower, which it kind of is. They're doing like a bit of a re-release thing. We'll see where that goes. But in terms of Silent Hill, I don't know if this is like blasphemy or anything like that, but my favorite is the first one. I think for me, it's also just like a nostalgia thing, a looking back thing. It's really the first game and The Room, because The Room was really different and creative, and it did some really weird things. I also think 3 is fucking killer, man. But the first game for me was that like, oh, wow, what is this? I discovered this completely like in a bubble on my own. I think Silent Hill 2 was like building up, and there had been things in magazines and magazine ads for it, and I was like, ooh, what's that? And then I saw in a bargain bin at like Costco or Sam's Club the original game on PS1. So I got that for a couple of bucks, popped that in, and was blown away. It's so cool still to this day. The adventure is a bit more boiled down, simple, straightforward, but the PS1 graphics just make the town, the atmosphere that much creepier. The sound effects, the music, everything there is just so good, from like walking the streets of the town to going through the school and those little creepy kids. Ooh, a lot of it was just so cool, but also to, again, just to discover that game, not knowing anything about it other than vague, magazine screenshots of Silent Hill 2, thinking, oh, that's kind of cool. And then jumping headfirst into the first game and seeing what the series was all about. I just got a lot of love for that, man. It's also made for some really good memes. I don't know if you've ever seen the one with the dog, but yeah, anyway, I digress. YouTube member Mr. Roshinator asks, what's your favorite soda currently? And what's your favorite soda that isn't around anymore? I miss Pepsi Twist. You're a madman for that one. But wow. Vanilla Coke. That's the easy answer. Vanilla Coke is the best thing ever. I'm also a bit more of a, so I always will choose Coke over Pepsi. I don't know what that says about me. I don't know if that means anything anymore, but I do like how Pepsi would fuck around and do weird stuff. Pepsi One, Pepsi Clear, Pepsi Blue, all that shit. I miss all of that. A couple other weird things that don't count as sodas, but I count them as beverages you can get in a gas station, which is kind of my life. Wawa. So in New York, we don't have Wawa. Shout out to New Jersey and beyond for having Wawa. Wawa has some of the best iced tea, dude, next to like Oak Tree and Dairy Barn iced tea and Arizona iced tea and all that. Wawa has really good peach iced tea. I always get that when I'm not in New York. But also Mountain Dew flavors. Sometimes, for some reason, this part of New York, like on Long Island, some of the Mountain Dew flavors are hard to come by. For years, we just didn't have access to Mountain Dew Code Red. It was just gone for a while. Now it's coming back, thankfully. But the one I can't get my hands on commonly around here is Mountain Dew Livewire. I love Mountain Dew Livewire. I say this all as somebody who doesn't drink a lot of soda, or I try not to, because I would just turn into a soda demon. So I always kind of use them as like a special treat, and it works. And Livewire, that shit kicks, man. At Jeff Hostetter 7160 asks, what is a game that you've played that you feel like nobody or very few others remember? I feel like every one of these videos, I always go down a nostalgia trip on a weird game, be it Heart of Darkness or the Road to El Dorado Game Boy Color game. But I would say another one on my mind is Advent Rising. Remember Advent Rising? I think that was for like the first Xbox and PlayStation 2, maybe. Let me look that up. Oh no, it was just on Xbox and PC, believe it or not. So this was like hyped up to be the next big thing. Apparently they had a bunch of games in place. It was going to be beyond just a game. And it was like a third-person sci-fi action adventure game. Back when those were plentiful, where you were just a guy running around with a gun. But this had vehicles, big environments, a lot of story, world-building stuff. It never really quite came together. And I don't think it ended up being a success. I think it was actually a bit of a flop, and they shit-canned all their plans for later stuff. But it did just feel a little different. It didn't feel quite like anything else I had played. I don't know what it was. I think it was really just the atmosphere around it, the feeling around it, the approach to it. But a lot of people worked on it. Tommy Tallarico was actually one of the composers on it. A little internet lore for you. I don't know. It just felt like it could have been something more. Even like Silicon Knights is too human. It was like there was a cool idea there, but it never really went anywhere. So rest in peace, Advent Rising. Hopefully maybe you either played that or like just learned about a weird new game today. Next up, this video is sponsored by Novium. Check out their hover pen. Look at this, the cool hover effect, and it spins. So if you don't know, Novium creates unique, high-end, innovative products aiming to help inspire curiosity and develop creativity, which is something I certainly need. And I've had their hover pens at my side, at my desk for a couple of weeks now. And to be frank, they're just really, really cool and nicely designed. In fact, the Interstellar edition you see right here received the award of one of the best innovations of 2022 by Time. It's a ballpoint pen sitting at a 23.5-degree angle. It's a nod to the Earth's axial tilt. I have the space black version on my desk, and it just reminds me of something that would be on the Normandy from Mass Mass Effect, like at the commander's desk or something, or in an office in the Citadel. I also have the Hover Pen Future Edition in Frost Silver. That has a really futuristic design. It just kind of makes me feel like a cyberpunk corpo. But they're legit pens. I mean, look at this bad boy. That's no joke. These things are refillable, so they're a bit sustainable, which I like. And if anything, they make for a great gift, especially with Father's Day right around the corner. I always struggle with gift ideas, but something as simple as a pen is an effective gift, but with a hover pen, there's like a bit more thought behind it and creativity. A great writing instrument that is also the perfect combination of art and space. Two things I personally really like. So if you want to check them out, you can enjoy 10% off all hover pens and free shipping to most countries when you use code ONJAKE. Just click the links in the description down below or use the QR codes on screen here. And again, it's a great gift. That's 10% off when you use code ONJAKE. Check it out, and big thanks to Novium for sponsoring this video. Lewis on Patreon asks, what's your take on Sony's state of play? Any hot takes? Feels like a bit of a wet fart. I think for me, my biggest hot take is that like, I just don't care as much anymore about like evaluating these events and giving them a score. Like, that event was great, I'd give it a 7 out of 10 or shit like that. It's all corporate presentations for where they're going, here's our product. So I've gotten a little cynical with that, but I think Sony, at the very least, you know, whether you want to hear it or not, has kind of done a good job setting expectations where they have state of play, which are just kind of like these updates where a lot of the times it's just new news on games that are already announced, a couple of announcements, and then they have their big like showcase experience things, which feel like the big, like more important presentations. So I don't know, with this state of play coming and seeing that it was only a half an hour and then putting the messaging out, that being like, oh, you know, it's just a couple of announcements. I went into it not really expecting much. And I actually took away liking a few things. You know, obviously all of the games announced, not every game is for me, like that dress up little girl game. It's not really my bag, dude. But yeah, I don't know. Other people have asked me like what I like the most from it, and it's probably the Astrobot game. A lot of people have been talking shit on me for daring to even suggest that, but it just shows that you didn't play the PlayStation 5 pack-in Astro game, which was awesome. So yeah, platformers are few and far between, so I try and embrace them when they do come out. I'm sorry if I biff this pronunciation. R. Lambden 1985 asks, when DMC releases a new DeLorean, they should offer one to you personally. Now, a lot of you guys send me all the DeLorean news. I really appreciate it, like the new DeLorean concept that DeLorean Motor Company is actually working on. It was shown off at like a car show. Like, it doesn't seem like it's ever really going to come to fruition. A lot of I follow the news hyper closely. I'm like really weirdly deep into DeLorean community, and there's a lot of skepticism about this vehicle ever actually coming to market. They've taken pre-orders for it. It's just got a lot of weird like Web3 NFT scammy stuff around it. They've also recently shuttered their office. One of their head leadership people stepped down. So I don't know. Ultimately, bottom line, the car itself, I don't even really love the new design. I like the original DeLorean for what it was. You can't make a new super hot sports car that very vaguely looks like a DeLorean and just, you know, hype me up. It doesn't work like that. The original car, still the best. Airdem says, do you ever think a game will be made themed around London? For example, The Getaway. The Getaway, London was incredible, dude. I was whisked away as like a little bit of like a weird, I don't know what you would call it, like a Britophile? I don't know, somebody who just like likes and is interested in that culture. That game was awesome for that. All that like style, but the actual sense of the city and how they made it was really cool. I really feel like it's weird that there aren't a lot of games set in London, like open world things. Of course, most recently we had Watch Dogs Legion, which I thought that London was fantastic. Probably one of the cooler parts of the game. I really enjoyed that. It's also part of the reason why I really enjoy Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Granted, that's like old-timey London, so it's very different, but I really appreciate that. So again, it's just weird that there aren't more games set in London because it is an interesting, diverse, large city. It's a big one. It's a significant one in just like world culture. So it's just weird that there's only been a few. So I expect almost just by law of averages, eventually we got to get something cool set in London again. Next, at Switz asks, I think people discount how we all develop secondary skills. Say, for example, your favorite reviewer might have also developed into a crazy good editor. Do you have any cool secondary skills you want to talk about? No. Most of mine are like weird and pointless. I will say, as a trade, as a skill, I can edit video much better than I let on, or like what my videos look like. And I'm self-taught, but it's something that I just grew to really love and embrace. So I'm happy that I can always do that until the machines take it away. My favorite thing about editing is fixing things. I always get like such a weird turn on from Frankensteining a project. If there is a project that is finished and there's no timeline left, like it is completely deleted and all I have is the video file, and I have to fix something and Frankenstein something using all the tricks and tools in the book, I get off on that. I love that about editing. And then the rest, if you want to call them skills, anything else I have is just like really random and stupid. It's just more like Jake trivia. I can pogo stick endlessly. Like if you put me on a pogo stick, I could pogo stick for hours. That is, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, but yeah, that is a thing. Yep. Also surprisingly decent with a yo-yo. I'd probably, if I picked up a yo-yo, I'd probably surprise some of you. But also, I could drive stick shift. So there's that. That's a recent thing I did. I taught myself. So just kind of to be like, you can teach an old dog new tricks. So I can do that. I can drive standard transmission. Not everybody can in these days. So I'm a little proud of that. I could pat myself on the back for once. Matt C 137 says, what would your ideal Resident Evil game be if you were to have creative freedom? Any time period, any characters, new, existing, any setting. This is probably going to be like my hottest / worst take ever yet, especially because everybody is sick of remakes and shit like that, or reboots. I would reboot Resident Evil. I think Resident Evil 9 is going to be an interesting inflection point for the series if they can bring it back around. The lore is all over the place. These characters are scattered. There's stuff in movies, some of it good, some of it awful. And I'm talking about the animated movies. I essentially would want to, if it was up to me and not anybody else, and I don't have to please anyone else but myself, I would rebuild Resident Evil in my image. Essentially what I would do is do Resident Evil 1, 2, 3 over again, and then take things slow, but continue the lore and make sure things don't get too off the rails, because I love the tone and just the vibe, the gameplay feel, everything of Resident Evil like 1, 2, 3. And I would love to see the series continue like that, but also not go too into bizarro territory. I love some of the more insane shit in Resident Evil 4, 5, beyond, yes, but there are so many other video games I can play that get all that crazy, awesome, over-the-top shit. I love the tense feeling of Resident Evil 1, of Resident Evil 2. I love the early rumblings of like the Umbrella villainy before it went really over the top. So I would love to keep things a little bit more low-key, more mysterious, slowly build up after the after effects of the mansion, Raccoon City, and then, slowly lead into what Claire's doing, what Leon's doing, eventually building Leon into the badass from 4. But, filling in the blanks. There's so much fun stuff we could do still around Raccoon City, right after Raccoon City, with those base characters. I just want to do that. Like we had a little bit of it with like Resident Evil 0, Code Veronica. I want more of that early feeling. That may be very unpopular, but that's where I'm gonna go. Oh boy, Evan Shannon 7182 says, what do you think of the Drake and Kendrick beef? I knew this was going to come up. There was a lot of these questions in the Q&A because the last one dropped around the time that was happening. I have a weird thing for the So Far Gone mixtape from like 08, 09. I absolutely love that. I think that's just a good collection of songs. But Kendrick, Kendrick, obviously, after everything that has gone down, he basically did Spawn Camp, Drake, and yeah. And that is, to me, just in terms of like which songs do I like better. I have no idea what anybody's talking about, any of like the actual beef. I barely know anything about it. But in terms of the songs, that's where I go. At Brandflakes asks, hey Jake, thoughts on Game Informer going back to physical copies? Yes, I actually have the newest issue on my desk. You know how cool it was to get this in the mail? devoid of like the GameStop bullshit, like the power up reward. So this is a simple magazine. It's not super thick. It's not filled with a lot of ads. It's just straightforward, good writing from people who've been doing a great job with this magazine for years now. The cover story, Star Wars Outlaws, so they're still getting cover stories, exclusives and stuff like that. And I posted this on social media because I was really excited to get this in the mailbox. And a lot of people were like, what? What's going on? So essentially, Game Informer is kind of doing their own subscription thing now. You sign up through their website and you subscribe and get a magazine. And the price is actually very reasonable. And they're just trying to do it the old way again. And I really respect them for that. I know a lot of people that work there that do a really good job. But for me, it's not about the particular outlet or the people. No offense to them. For me, this is why I got into this. I grew up reading about magazines, I grew up reading about video games in magazines, just poring over them, going crazy, obsessing over screenshots, articles, little quotes from developers, and just imagining games that I never had the money to even get my hands on a lot of the time. So I just love that little bit of nostalgia. And now as an adult, I don't know, I have a coffee table and I like having a couple of interesting things to read or magazines sitting on the table to pick up and browse through. And now that I can do video games, again, that's great. Game Informer, of course, is coming back, but there's still plenty of other gaming magazines out there that were holding it down, like Edge. But it's good to see them come back like triumphantly, you know? They were having a tough go for a while. And Jake on Patreon says, I just finished watching Fallout and really loved how they adapted it to TV. With the success of both Fallout and The Last of Us TV shows, what game or games would you like to see adapted to television? Now, I might be a broken record, like, oh, here he goes talking about Metal Gear again. But I think that I've talked a lot on record about how nervous I am that they're trying to adapt or squeeze Metal Gear Solid into a movie. I think an animated TV show done really well by the right people has a lot more potential. There's room to grow. There's room to flesh out those concepts, the weird stuff, without the pressure of millions and billions of dollars and hundreds of people working on a thing with like a giant production house, you know, movie company doing it. Like, I just think there's potential for it to be an animated thing. And I've recently come around to that realization. I also would like to see, now I'm going insane, like a Final Fantasy movie, not Spirits Within. Like, what if they just made like a live action Final Fantasy movie? It took elements from the Final Fantasy franchise, of course, but again, it's its own new world, its own lore, its own story. I think that could be really interesting and really cool. You know, even if it was like a movie made in Japan with subtitles or dub or whatever, interesting. I don't know. There's something there. Or I would like to see, again, Netflix has been spending a lot of money on adaptations and animated stuff. It'd be cool if they did an animated Final Fantasy show that, again, let them build a new Final Fantasy world and do all that. There's also the opportunity, of course, to jump back into old worlds of Final Fantasy that we haven't gotten to spend too much time in, you know, any of them, really. Either way, that's something I'd really want to see, but that's just me. And I think I have yapped on for a while now, so thank you for listening to this. I definitely want to hear from you guys in the comments what you feel, what you think about, you know, Game Informer magazine returning, or, you know, old games that you remember, like Advent Rising, or maybe another game set in London and the surrounding area. I don't know. Let's talk about any of this stuff down in the comments. I definitely want to hear from you, but the most important thing is hit your boy, me, with questions for the next video. I'll go back to this video, I'll scroll through, I'll take some of your questions and talk about it in the next one. That's how this goes. Thank you for being here. I'm just having fun talking about stuff I love, so I hope you appreciate that. If you do, clicking the like button helps me. Thank you. But that's really it. I'm Jake Baldino. Have a great one. Be safe. Subscribe because video games. Pizza's on me.